What's going on, you guys? Welcome to back to Mondays with Mox. I am Officer Mox. I'm with the fun and the fab, Miss Anderson.
Hey, guys.
And hey, I want to introduce you guys to a very special friend of mine. This is Detective Aaron McCarver.
What's happening?
With Hillsborough Police. He's one of the SROs that we have here at Hillsborough PD. And I brought Aaron here because Aaron is a drug recognition expert, which means he understands all things about drugs for the most part, the effects it has on people, what they are, what they look like, signs and symptoms, and all this stuff. And we thought it was a good idea that we bring some info to you guys, and I'm really happy that Aaron's here. So
well, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here, dude. A little fist bump action.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, Aaron, some of the things that we see in middle school or in schools in general is going to be probably the biggest ones would be marijuana use, prescription pills, and vaping.
Yeah.
And I just want the kids to be aware of this stuff and know what it can do to their body, their brain development, all these things.
Sure.
So would you mind maybe talking a little bit about, we'll start with marijuana, and just some of the things that kids should be aware about what it does to their bodies and brains?
Yeah, absolutely. So, so a question I get a lot is, from youth especially, is why is this stuff illegal for me to use? Why is it bad for me? Well, and that's actually the answer. It's because, it's not just because adults want to be mean to the youth or everybody else. There are legitimate reasons why kids should not be using this stuff. And some might argue adults for that matter. That's another topic. However, some of the things that we look at when we are talking about marijuana use with the youth primarily is brain development. So
okay.
I don't know how many of you know this, but the human brain doesn't actually fully develop until about 25 years old.
Okay.
So while your brain is still developing, specifically the frontal lobe, it's susceptible to, for lack of a better term, poisons. So anytime you are ingesting a substance that makes you feel kind of funny, alcohol, marijuana, prescription drugs perhaps, it's your body views it as a poison.
Interesting.
And your brain, especially when it's developing, is susceptible to that poison and can have long-term effects where it might not have the same long-term effects on adults.
So you said frontal lobe. What is that? What happens in that area?
Great question. So the frontal lobe is responsible for things like decision making, which obviously is important, and because it's not fully developed until you're about 25 years old, that area can be permanently affected by some of these substances and will affect your ability to make, healthy, rational decisions in the future.
Interesting. So, in a way, can this poison that is introduced to the body and to the brain, can it actually rewire the way the brain was meant to be used and developed?
Absolutely, absolutely. So there is actually quite a bit of research out there that shows decreased IQ in youth who have been using substances like marijuana and the long-term effects it'll have on the brain.
Okay.
So it will actually, with prolonged use, rewire the circuitry.
I think something that's really tricky about this too is that if a youth is using, I don't think they're not noticing right now in that moment or the next day that their brain has been damaged, and
Correct.
so you don't feel that when it's happening. It's not
Right.
like when you break your arm and you've broken your arm.
Right.
So I can just want to acknowledge that that's kind of a tricky thing for
Absolutely.
our kids.
So this is a great point. So I liken this to my kids' growth, for example. I see my kids every day and I don't really notice them growing until I see somebody maybe they haven't seen in a while and they say, wow, your kids are so big. It's kind of like that with drug use, where these changes can be subtle over time, and it's really maybe down the road where you might wake up and notice, wow, all these changes have happened to my brain that I didn't really notice happening along the way.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So maybe some signs that they could see if things are starting to change, like in school, and you already mentioned a little bit, but like IQ being decreased.
Absolutely.
But, how about like attention span in school and
Absolutely.
the willingness or wanting to be at school and to do the things that they're supposed to be doing?
Sure, and it will affect everyone a little bit differently. You can't say that one substance is going to affect everyone exactly the same way. But it does have a lot of other effects on motivation. Maybe it's kind of a classic stereotypical assumption of users of marijuana, or cannabis is actually more of a general term that we usually use.
Right.
But it absolutely can and will affect things like motivation, your ability to kind of focus and pay attention in class. And frankly, more to your point, your teachers are probably going to notice it before you do, because you're in it. You're not going to be as objectively looking at yourself and your own performance in school as a teacher might. And so it's very common that a teacher might notice some kind of subtle changes in your work, in your ability to pay attention, in your motivation that you might not notice initially.
And I could see this segueing into vaping, because we've seen you know, the different kinds of vaping tools, I guess, that are, you know, for lack of a better term, the vapes that are out there, the pens, the drops, the whatever, the jewels. You can also smoke marijuana with using and utilizing that, the oils and whatnot.
Absolutely. And so I don't actually know how widely known this is, but you can absolutely use different vaping products to ingest. Again, we use the term cannabis in the drug recognition expert world, because marijuana really kind of refers to a flower, the actual green plant. Cannabis is what we refer to as, because now you're seeing it in so many different forms, including liquids that you can put into jewels or different vape pens, or actually vape, I don't even call them pens, they're more instruments that you can put the marijuana buds in and smoke them through those devices directly. You don't have to change it into an oil or a liquid to use it through a vape pen. So we are seeing quite a bit of that. I mean, most vaping, I would say, at the middle school, high school level is going to be a nicotine product. That's another topic that we can talk about. But some of it is also going to be cannabis use. And just like vaping nicotine, you might not, as a bystander, know exactly what's happening, what kind of substance they're ingesting. And that's my cue.
We are in school. One of the benefits. Okay, cool. Do we want to touch any more on vaping? I think that kind of, I think you nailed it pretty much on that.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk a little bit about nicotine. I mean, nicotine is classified as a drug in and of itself, and it's one of the most addictive substances that humans ingest, and that comes with a whole slew of other negative health side effects. You know, the old argument was that, well, we'll switch to e-cigarettes or vaping as a healthier way of smoking, and that's just absolutely false. There's nothing that could be further from the truth. There are thousands of different chemicals inside the juice, as they call it, even if we're just talking about nicotine. And the effects on the body are many, and frankly, you don't even know what is in them most of the time. The industry is not very well regulated, and you could be ingesting all sorts of carcinogens that you don't even know what it's going to do to you.
And just carcinogens being bad chemicals,
things
that aren't good for you. All right.
Bad stuff.
Bad stuff.
So, and you won't know. You can't know. I mean, it's not like you read the label.
The labels aren't, it's not telling you what's on there.
Exactly, like a food label is required to. The industry's not regulated like that.
Interesting. Okay. Well, cool. And so the last thing, Aaron, I want to talk to you about is prescription pills.
Yeah.
So, you know, the biggest thing is that, you know, sometimes youth that do ingest them, they don't even know what it is, what it does. And frankly, I know we have seen, all three of us have seen, unfortunately, youth and even adults have seriously hurt themselves, been hospitalized, and unfortunately have also passed away and died from utilizing these things in the improper way, the way they were not meant to be used.
Yeah.
So is there any just information that you could pass on to them about, you know, some of the prescription pills, do's and don'ts?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a huge topic we could spend literally hours on, so I'll try to make this as concise as possible. One of the biggest trends that we've seen in the last, excuse me, probably 3 or 4 years is fake pills, basically. So you can, anyone, unfortunately, can, if they know where to look, they can buy what's called a pill press. And all this is a machine that will take various powdery substances with the right type of caking agent and press it into whatever shape they want it to be. You just have to have the right dye for it. It's kind of like a stamp, you know. You've got your imprint of the stamp and you dip it in ink and put it on the paper, and that's what it looks like. You can do the same thing with a pill. And we're seeing, at least from the street level, more fake pills than legitimate pills. And so people are buying these pills that they think are Xanax because they look a lot like Xanax, because they do look exactly like Xanax. But oftentimes they'll have fentanyl in them, and I don't know if you've talked about fentanyl at all.
We haven't talked about fentanyl, not this year.
Okay.
But that's we can touch on it real quick. What fentanyl is?
Yeah. So fentanyl is a narcotic analgesic, and it's a synthetic narcotic analgesic. Most of it's coming from China. And what will happen is you'll have somebody buying these pill presses, buying fentanyl, mixing it with other caking agents, and stamping out fake Xanax pills. That's what we're seeing the most of right now is Xanax that's not even actually Xanax.
Right.
There's no... Xanax is a central nervous system depressant. I don't want to get too much into the science of it, but a lot of these fake Xanax pills actually have none of the actual Xanax ingredients in them. It's fentanyl with a bunch of who knows what that some guy in his bedroom is stamping out.
Well, and fentanyl in itself is extremely potent, and very dangerous.
Very absolutely dangerous.
Hey, look, there's that bell again.
There's that bell again. And so, I mean, I don't know how much we want to talk about overdose here, but I personally have seen some pretty tragic overdose deaths with fake Xanax pills.
Very cool.
So it's legit. It's real. It's not something you want to mess around with, and they look exactly like Xanax. Yeah, and that's just the fake stuff. That's not even talking about the legitimate prescription pills that are being abused. So
right. Well, and I would love to get more into that. Yeah. But I think just for time's sake, here's the thing, guys. Here's the bottom line. If you haven't been given a prescription by a doctor, and that dosage, which is allotted just for that amount and that time, then don't be taking it. You know, number one, if you don't know what it is you're taking, don't take it. We're learning about marijuana, what it can do as far as rewiring your brain to not function the way it's really supposed to function and do the things that it was designed and meant to do. And so here's the thing, we want to give you some of these tools so that if ever you are presented with something, whether I should or I shouldn't, we're really hoping you've taken some of this knowledge and go, yeah, this isn't for me. I don't want to do that. So again, Aaron, we appreciate that. Thanks so much for being on the show, bud.
And if anybody has any questions, you can get a hold of me or Mox, and I'd be happy to give you more information on this.
Super cool. Thanks, buddy.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, you guys, here we are, last week of first semester. That means when we see you next week, that will be the first day of semester number 2. So for our 8th graders, it's your last semester already of middle school.
Aww, how exciting though.
So again, thank you to Aaron for being here today. And as always, stay rad.
Stay rad, we love you guys. Cheers, see you next week.
Ciao.
Thank you.